Alright, our next article is about low traffic neighborhood. In the United Kingdom, a low traffic neighborhood, also called an LTN, is an area in which filtered permeability and traffic calming are deployed to reduce motorized through traffic in residential areas. Many LTNs were introduced in spring of 2020, although the same principles have been used in London since the 1970s. LTNs can be implemented through the use of barriers such as bollards, boom barriers, and planters. They can also be implemented virtually through the use of automatic number plate recognition, cameras, and road signs, which can allow vehicle access for residents and emergency services while prohibiting unrelated through traffic. As for their history, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, there were already at least 25,000 modal filters across the UK. Low traffic neighborhoods have been a common policy in designing new towns and communities in the UK since the 1960s. Local councils engaged in extensive public consultations and provided educational materials to ensure community awareness and support for the LTN implementations. In Primrose Hill, London, the death of 2 children on the roads in the 1960s led to the railway bridge on Regent's Park Road being closed to vehicles using bollards. This made Primrose Hill an area without through traffic. In Newton, Exeter, Sanford Walk and East John Walk were closed to vehicles in 1970 using bollards and ramps as part of a program of urban renewal. One of the best known LTNs was implemented in De Beauvoir Town, Hackney, London by the Greater London Council, designed by architect and local resident Graham Parsi. The modal filters were introduced as experimental measures on April 8, 1974, and made permanent on April 1975. During the COVID-19 pandemic, 2020 to 2021, 72 low-traffic neighborhoods with modal filters were rolled out under emergency legislation in London, covering a population of around 300,000. Waltham Forest had previously introduced a number of LTNs between 2015 and 2019. As for traffic, in London, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, traffic had risen on side roads by over 100% since 2008. LTNs were implemented in Waltham Forest in 2014. In 2016, on 3 LTN boundary roads, traffic had increased by 2.6% and 28.3%. 2 of the 3 roads were within the normal range for recent fluctuations in traffic flow. For Shernal Street, the only road study that registered an increase, it was found that the 2016 traffic count was around the same as the 2009 traffic count for this road. In the Walthamstow Village, LTN roads saw an average of 44.1% reduction in traffic. Surrounding roads saw an increase in traffic, most notably Shernal Street. On Lea Road, the maximum hourly traffic reduced after the introduction of the scheme, and traffic appears more spread out across the day. For buses, the majority of buses through the village were running very close to normal times, though bus routes on boundary roads recorded an increase. This was in line with the control routes across the borough. A 2022 study studied 3 LTNs in Islington Borough between July 2019 and February 2021. It found a 58.2% decrease in traffic compared with control sites in the same area. A smaller, statistically insignificant decrease of 13.4% was found on boundary sites. In 3 LTN areas and Southwark, traffic speeds decreased. Traffic levels remained unchanged on boundary streets in 2 of these areas. In 1, there was an increase in traffic levels during weekdays and peak hours. Walking and cycling counts remained approximately constant. A systemic review and meta-analysis of local authority data on 46 LTNs introduced between May 2020 and May 2021 in 11 London boroughs showed that car traffic with the zones almost halved, while on the boundary roads there was almost no effect on traffic. A 2023 Department for Transport review found that LTNs were effective in achieving outcomes of reducing traffic volumes within their zones, while adverse impacts on boundary roads appear to be limited. As for other outcomes, pollution and health, a 2022 study studied 3 LTNs in Islington Borough between July 2019 and February 2021. It found that LTNs have reduced the level of nitrogen dioxide by 5.7% on internal sites and 8.9% on boundary sites. The introduction of LTNs has also been associated with improved air quality, contributing to public health benefits by reducing pollutants such as nitrogen dioxide. As for injury rates, 2 LTNs were introduced in London between 2015 and 2019 after extensive consultation and with significant engineering improvements. Within the LTN areas, the number of injuries and the risk of injury per trip reduced by about 70% for walkers, cyclists, and car occupants. There was no change in injuries on LTN boundary roads. Some 72 LTNs in London were introduced in 2020 more hastily and with relatively few engineering measures. These halved injury rates, especially pedestrian injuries on roads within the LTN zones. Again, no change was found on boundary roads. In June 2025, a research study found that LTNs in London were associated with significant reduction in road injuries and deaths with their boundaries. The study compared over a decade of road casualties statistics from 113 London LTNs and found a 35% reduction in all injuries, with a 37% reduction of deaths and serious injuries. This equated to over 600 prevented road injuries, including 100 involving death or serious injury. The study also found no observable changes in casualties on roads immediately outside the LTNs. In January 2026, a research study found that the number of collisions with casualties within the Oxford LTN area fell by more than 64%. The study also found that numbers of collisions with casualties in the boundary roads fell by 25%. This equated to roughly 69 casualties prevented. The study found that Crowley LTNs had saved more than £2 million as a result of collisions and casualties avoided since being installed. As for crime and social safety, the introduction of LTNs led to a decrease in total street crime, increasing the duration since implementation, with no displacement to other areas. After 3 years of implementation, a study found an 18% decrease in street crime in LTN areas. A larger reduction was found for violent crimes and sexual assaults. Only a single subcategory for crime saw an increase, bicycle theft. In Tower Hamlets, Lefter Rahman was urged by the Metropolitan Police not to dismantle a low-traffic neighborhood in Bethnal Green, reflecting concerns that removing it will lead to an increase in crime. As for active travel, LTNs tend to encourage more active travel, shifting people from car use to these modes. Emergency rapid implemented LTNs see more walking, cycling, and improved perception of the local cycling environment. People in LTNs are becoming less likely to own a car and more likely to reduce their car usage. In Waltham Forest, a study found that the number of cars and vans fell in mini Holland areas, particularly in those involving an LTN. Regarding emergency vehicles, a 2020 study of the impact of the Waltham Forest LTN in London found no evidence that fire brigade emergency response times were affected inside LTNs, and some evidence that they improved slightly on boundary roads, despite a perception among fire crews that traffic calming was the cause of some delays. A 2021 study in Findings Journal examined the impact of 72 LTNs in London on fire brigade emergency response times. It found no evidence that response times were affected, either for LTNs that use physical barriers or for those that use camera enforcement. This next section is regarding equity, but this says LTN implementation since 2020 in London has been broadly equitable at the city and micro levels. The most deprived quarter are more likely to live in a newly opened LTN than people in the least deprived quarter. Ethnic minorities are more likely to live in a newly opened LTN than white people. London boroughs have, on average, implemented LTNs in their most deprived districts. Critics of LTNs also include Green campaigners such as Jon Stewart and Rosamund Kissy-Deborah. Stewart has argued that LTNs are inherently unfair because in most cases they simply displace traffic and pollution to the adjacent main and boundary roads. While Kissy-Deborah also frames the problem in terms of social justice, she argues that affluent neighborhoods are more likely to benefit from traffic reduction, and more deprived areas are more likely to suffer from the traffic displacement and added pollution. This next section is regarding controversy, but this says modal filters and low traffic neighborhoods have sometimes been criticized for a number of reasons. The British motoring magazine Auto Express criticized these schemes for their levels of cost, calling them a waste of money. Other criticisms include high fines and a lack of consultation in implementing the scheme. In the UK, the implementation of low traffic neighborhoods in 2020 was compared to Brexit in its divisiveness, and there were speculations that this issue would affect election results. Opposition to the schemes had been linked to the 15-minute city conspiracy theory, with the Institute for Strategic Dialogue describing the LTNs being used as a lightning rod for wider culture war issues. These schemes have led to protests in Oxford and Croydon from anti-LTN activists. The former actor, Lawrence Fox, when running for a Greater London mayor in 2021, pledged to remove all modal filtering, even those in place before 2020, in London. On his platform, Fox received just 1.9% of his first round votes. In Hackney, a candidate standing on an anti-LTN platform in a by-election in Hoxton East and Shoreditch in May 2021 received fewer than 8% votes, while in a by-election in St. Peter's Ward in Islington, an anti-LTN candidate received only 318 out of the 4,395 of votes, or 7.2%. In May 2022, Lutfer Rahman was re-elected in Tower Hamlets, having campaigned against the borough's LTN plans. In 2023, the UK's Department for Transport surveyed residents of trial LTN areas in London, Birmingham, Wigan, and York. An average of 45% respondents supported the schemes and 21% opposed them. 58% were unaware that they had lived in a low-traffic neighborhood. See also permeability, spatial and transport planning, school streets, rat running, 15-minute cities, and urban vitality. This is the article for low traffic neighborhoods. Honestly, I'm an American. I like our whole culture is based off of cars, based around cars, and I can tell you from experience, when you try to prevent traffic going from one area, it's just gonna exacerbate the problem in other areas. Obviously, I don't live in London. I'm sure the car culture and the car traffic there is different, and I'm sure that this has helped in some ways, but I gotta agree with John Stewart and Miss Kissy Deborah, because if you're gonna be redirecting traffic, you'd have to make the traffic flow better. Like, people are gonna try to be getting to the places that they're trying to go to, whether you're blocking traffic from one way or another. And if you want low traffic in one area, that's cool, that's awesome, that's great, but that traffic's still gonna be there. It doesn't go anywhere. It's a zero-sum game. But yeah, I could see why they're pretty divisive, because if the main road from where I'm at right now, if all of a sudden all the traffic just got rerouted from like the main highway over to like my street, I'd be pretty upset about it too. I'd be pretty big mad about it. But apparently it wasn't big enough of a problem for people to elect people that were only on the platform of abolishing these types of traffic solutions. And evidently there were quite a lot of people that didn't even know they lived in those cities. But then again, those are probably people that just live there or don't watch the news, or probably people like me that lived in the United States and then moved to the UK and didn't realize that they bought a house in that kind of neighborhood. But yeah, low traffic neighborhoods, definitely a double-edged sword. Probably great if you actually live in them, but probably sucks if you live around them.